You know the old saying, don't preach to the choir, or he's only preaching to the choir, or variations on that theme. I think the only people worth preaching to are the members of the choir. And that's from years of trying to do anything else. Even on Facebook and places like that, a lot of people try to get me to have a debate with them. I think that platform is great for disseminating general interest information and sharing articles and things like that. But I'm just not interested in having a discourse of any depth whatsoever on Facebook or places like that. Because I just don't think that it's conducive to having a nuanced conversation, and you're missing so much context in terms of body language and inflection, tone, that sort of thing, and those things matter. So and beyond that, the blah, blah, blah. This one I'm actually going to try to edit. So, beyond tone and inflection and all of that body language and things of that nature that are lost, just the format of having to type all this shit out is in real time. I think that having a written discourse with people who are sincere and reasonably compatibly educated with you about that particular topic in a written format is awesome. I mean, pen pal days sort of thing, and writing this stuff out is for sure valuable. But what passes for discourse generally, even with people that I respect and that I think are sincere, in a format like Facebook, it almost always degenerates into essentially sort of like this pissing contest and this one-off, sort of a one-liner punked episode. So I don't know if that reference still plays, but there was a show called Punked, where the whole point of the show was to make somebody else look like a fool, and most of what passes for discourse these days in any format really, but even worse in social media, is that sort of approach, just trying to make them look like idiots. There's not even, most of the time, there's not even the effort to make it look like you're trying to get to any kind of truth at all. And there's a lot of circles that don't even acknowledge the possibility of actually getting to the truth. It's just like, we're just going to go full on into ego and try to just bludgeon the shit out of the other person, because there is no truth. It's just my fucking opinion. And recently there have been, and this is maybe a little bit, there's no topic, fuck it. So recently there's been I've been watching with a good deal of horror people like Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris and people like this, who, I mean, these are smart people, but there's a self-serving egotism that I think is super dangerous with these guys. It's just the level of hubris involved in the ways that these guys approach their subjects. But the reason I bring them up is that they are some of the people that are pushing back against this idea that there's no such thing as truth whatsoever, that you can't arrive at any kind of truth. I think I think it's super tough. It's definitely a tall order to, and there's, you know, it's perhaps a bit not hypocritical or ironic, but it's there's a certain amount of hubris involved in thinking that you can arrive at any part of actual truth. But I still think that there is a value to the effort. If you don't think there's any truth, you're for sure never going to get there. And I think that, for instance, in art, when I was in art school, we used to talk about my little analogy was sort of circling like a vulture, trying to get at the point, which is probably a lot of what's going on here. But that in art, for me especially, the reason that you present things the way that you do, and you don't just write a paper about it, for instance, is that there are certain types of truth that for which there are no other words. And so, and even there's some truth for which there are no words at all. And in a similar vein, people who talk about how there's no such thing as altruism, for instance, this is, all of these sorts of things are semantic arguments, and they are important to have with sincere people who are not sociopaths and psychopaths and narcissists, because the playing field for all of these subjects, high-level intellectual pursuits, legal things, art, philosophy, all of these things, once you introduce that psychopathic, sociopathic energy into the equation, and you start to accept ideas that maybe you can't verbally see. This is tricky territory, man. I'm gonna have to retry this one, but I think professional philosophers and professional attorneys and judges and people like this, they have to adhere to certain arbitrary rules of engagement, and it's valid, but at the scale that these things currently operate at, the advantage is to sociopaths, and you start to have things like I mean, most of the philosophy at the end of the thing that Nazis and other fascists were talking about was quote unquote reasonable, and anybody, you know, shit. See, this is the problem, man, right here, because most people know that it's wrong. Most people can't express precisely in logical form, verbally, why exactly it's wrong, precisely that it's wrong. But that doesn't mean that they're wrong for calling it wrong. And I know that there's a sticking point in formal philosophy that has to do with whether or not there are any truths that cannot be arrived at through the pursuit of philosophy or through the lens of philosophy or expressed verbally and things like this. And that's sort of an academic argument, and those arguments are important to have, but they're not the whole game, man. Just because you're a specialist in something doesn't mean you're any good at it. There's lots of people that are doctors that suck ass at it.